Welcome to DCMT. I'm Eric McClanahan, joined again this time with Kylan Savage and AJ Simmons. How you guys doing?
I'm gonna make it. I'm a little frazzled having to make the list that we're gonna talk about. Because I could do a top 10 for literally every single year.
Me and
Uh,
AJ have been.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
oh man. Well,
If
Yeah,
you
we
want to
could.
do that for the
I
2010s,
might.
that we'll be
Okay.
moving on
All
to
right.
that.
All
He's
right.
got to
I could
build up
do
his
that.
muscles, right, Eric? Like,
Yeah.
we go through this and like we've built up this
That's
like
true.
Yeah.
That's true.
the muscle of being able to make the tough calls here that Kylan apparently is too weak to make.
That's true. I'm much too emotional about it. Speaking of emotional, we'll see. We'll see what genre of music tends to dominate my 2000s list.
Yeah, so we were just talking about how difficult it was choosing all these, and I texted Kylan earlier asking how many honorable mentions he was going to have, and he said 1,000. So
Close to it.
so I guess we will get into the honorable mentions if you guys are good with that.
Eddie.
AJ, why don't you go first? Because Kylan has probably a longer list than.
I kept it to 10 for this.
Okay,
I
okay,
might I might actually sneak in like 12 or 13, but we'll
that's all
see.
right.
I might just do them so fast you won't know until I'm done that there were 15.
There's a possibility of some overlap. So if I say one, Eric, that you're like, hey, that's actually my top 10. There's one in particular. Just tell me that, and I will. Okay, we'll save that conversation for when you mention it in your
Oh,
top
nice.
10.
Okay.
All right, so I don't include EPs in my list. I kind of find it not be like apples and oranges almost.
Right.
So I have two honorable mention EPs. The first is Gaslight Anthem, Senior and the Queen. It is only 4 tracks, but it happens to have like 3 of my top 10 favorite Gaslight songs on it. It is like if you like give me 4 tracks of that summarize Gaslight Anthem, I'm gonna tell you go listen to Senior and the Queen.
Nice. Well, I
It
just
is.
got into Gaslight Anthem this year or last year with history books.
Ah,
I never listened to them because I always confuse them with another band, Streetlight Manifesto.
very different
And
bands.
yeah, no, I know, but in my brain, they were always, oh, that's just the same band. Then History Books came out. There was a Bruce Springsteen feature.
Uh-huh.
I was in the midst of my Bruce Springsteen deep dive. I was like, oh, I should check this out. It became my number 2 or number 3 favorite album of 2023. So I need to check out this EP.
Yes. I'll have more to say on Gaslight Anthem later on. They will
Oh,
make
sweet.
another appearance on here.
Great. Love it.
Um, uh, uh, but yes, and so the other EP is actually a band that won't appear on mine, but might appear on Eric's and will definitely think be a contender for the next one. So Paper Route. They prior to being Paper Route, they had a band called For All the Drifters at the private liberal arts college, like I don't know, a couple hours away from me.
Oh,
The same one that
nice.
Georgia Clay is from, because that's where Paper Route is from. Called For All the Drifters. They did an EP that is self-titled, and it is like a weird, like if Paper Route and like Angels and Airwaves made an album together, so like an
Okay.
arena rock version of the later Paper Route stuff. So it's
Look at that.
fantastic, and you kind of can see the band becoming what they did. I think it's 3 of the 5 guys from All the Drifters went on to form Paper Route. And then I always have soundtracks. So I've got 3 soundtracks. First is High Fidelity's soundtrack. It's
Yeah.
incredibly diverse, and the main character is obsessed with lists, a bit like
Yeah.
this show. Um, and then Elizabethtown.
Oh, yeah.
So it seems like maybe an odd one, but it is what introduced me to like alternative country more widely. So namely like Ryan Adams and My Morning Jacket.
Hmm.
Because I lived in the rural Southwest, I'm not going to discover either of those absent something like this. And
Right.
so, yes, introduced me to both of those. And then the Donnie Darko soundtrack, I don't think that shocks anybody here.
Right.
Anybody that's
The
listened that
tracks.
heard the 80s.
The
80s.
tracks.
Yeah. And then some of the more obscure bands, I always like try to spotlight some bands I don't think folks have ever heard of. So the first is a band called Karate High School. Have either of you ever heard of Karate
I have
High
not
School?
heard of Karate High School.
Okay, so they're this really weird band that I would describe as pop post-hardcore synth music.
Oh,
Like
you're
I've heard
speaking my language.
I've
Those are all-
heard synthcore is like a word to describe them, or
Okay.
Nintendo core.
Mhm.
Very pop punk, very self-aware. They have a song called Punk Rock Uniform that is like making fun of teenage punk rock fans that see themselves as like the real fans of the genre and hate if anybody else likes the Clash that
Nice.
doesn't like wear their punk rock uniform. I couldn't narrow it down on a specific album for them, so anything by Karate High School, though I don't
Okay.
think all of their stuff is on streaming. But they are super fun. I saw them like 3 times within a like calendar year. They just used to tour nonstop trying to like break through. Their frontman is now like an executive at Google, which is wild.
Okay.
Like that's a heck of a transition. And then Play Radio Play, their album Texas.
Whoa, that didn't make my list, but that was a big record for me too.
You were an indie alt kid from Texas. Yeah, you might have heard of it.
Oh yeah, you know it. I played a show with the project he did after Play Radio Play,
Analog Rebellion.
Analog Rebellion. I played at a tiny little Irish bar in Frisco, Texas, opening for Analog Rebellion. But yeah,
There you go.
I loved the Frequency EP too
Did he?
that he did before that, because I had the Mr. Brightside cover. I was
And
all
Decipher
like-
Reflections, I think, is on
Uh-huh.
that one as well. I almost put that EP as well, but I was like, I can't have 2 mentions of like the same band
Right.
and honorable mentions. But yeah, their Texas album I went with. And then E for Explosion, Reinventing the Heartbeat.
Oh, nice.
I don't know. Have you actually heard of that guy?
I have,
Seems like-
yes.
okay.
I'm
I'm
hearing names I haven't heard in forever.
There you go. Eric, you might like this. Like very Cure.
Okay.
I think like heavy influence of the Cure.
I had this CD.
Yeah, I happened to. The frontman had a prior band, Jameson Parker, with Parker Case, who's in.
That's
Say
why I
Anything.
know it. That's why
Yeah.
I know it. Because Jameson
Yeah,
Parker
and-
also almost made my list. That's, yeah.
I want to say, if I remember this correctly, I found them because they opened for Karate High School. It was like them, a band called Hyper Crush out of LA, which is like this crazy like party techno music, and then Karate High School. I was like, this is the strangest lineup
That
ever.
that
But I
sounds
think
wild.
that might be, at least it's the same venue. It was this weird house that got converted to a music venue in Phoenix called The One Place that became a church afterwards. It has an interesting transition. But yeah, super cool. I think in particular, Eric, you would like that.
Okay.
Very 80s Cure-esque type tunes. Then the Perishers, Let There Be Morning would be another one I would throw out. Have
Don't know
either of
that
you
one.
heard that?
Nope, don't know that one.
So yeah, they had a few albums, but this was one I really liked. There's a ton of songs. They have a version of their song. They have a version of one of their songs that has like Sarah McLachlan on it, and it works really well. But yeah, the Perishers, and then this one again. This might be an overlap with you, Eric. So if it is, just
Okay.
tell me stop talking. We'll talk about
Okay.
it when you mention it. And that's Deus Vale's Birds in Cages.
Nope.
Okay.
Not an overlap. But
Okay. I know you're a fan of Deus Vale. Again, you're like the only other
am.
person I've ever met that actually knew
Yeah.
who they were.
That's
they're
wild.
all
They
the
were
house.
they were a local
Go ahead.
band for me too. I opened for them quite a bit too
Nope,
back in
no
the day.
kidding.
yeah, they're an Arkansas band. So
Okay.
that's like when I felt the coolest in high school, was opening for Deus Vale.
They are
They-
fantastic.
They're All the Houses Look the Same album is one that was in my top 100, but still was not high enough to make my honorable mention. But
Gotcha.
I will be mentioning it later. Something
Okay.
else I'll talk about.
Yeah.
I was also going to say Elizabethtown is not very far from where I live, so it's a pretty cool place. I was also going to say I'm pretty sure, I was trying to figure it out for sure, but I haven't found it yet, that a member of a band in my top 10 played on a Play Radio Play album.
Hmm,
I think. I'm still kind of
okay.
halfway searching that out.
All right.
This
Play
is
Radio
amazing to have some
Play. I did
overlap.
not-
Not only you playing with Play Radio Play and knowing Deus Vale and stuff like that, and even vaguely hearing E for Explosion. I grew up being like the person that knew all the weird bands that my friends
Right.
were like, I guess we'll go to the show
Yeah.
with you. So
That was something.
if-
Yes, okay. E for Explosion. Because I had that album, because the Jameson Parker album was like a really big album for me, but I felt it was maybe too emo to make my
Yes.
my top 10. I mean,
I
Alcohol
agree.
and Bandages. But I still I have that. I have Jameson Parker on a Spotify playlist of like Oh yeah, do you remember this band? Is the name of the? I think it's a
One
bunch
of the
of.
cool things that I have from E for Explosion is, again, that show at the one place. They had just put out an EP that they drew all of the art by hand on. They only
Oh
made like
wow.
a few hundred versions of this EP on that looked like cardboard cases. And so it had like hand drawn and like glued on paper flowers never die, I think was the name of the EP. And so like that's one of the cooler albums I think I own, just simply because like who does an hand drawn CD case?
I remember that too because I stole that idea for a tour that I did. It was some friends and I, we call it the handmade tour. And I did a bunch of handmade, printed, drawn on EPs. And then the actual CD was just CDRs that I just Sharpied on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, those are my honorable mentions.
those are good.
Yeah.
Curious to see where the actual
I
list goes.
I did find that a member of a band in my top 10 played on Play Radio Plays Texas album.
Oh,
So
I'm so
I'll
Can we
say
take a
which one
guess
that
on
is
what
when we get
band that
there.
is? Because I'm gonna guess
Yeah.
Falling Up.
That's incorrect.
Oh, I do
Ooh.
have, and I'm curious, Eric. I guessed your top 10.
Oh,
I
okay.
have it written down, so we'll
Okay.
see if
Okay, and then my weird side bet is I can almost guarantee there's one artist that AJ and I are going to overlap, but I just don't know which album it's going to be.
I think so too, because if it is the band I think of, I learned a really incredible stat while doing research about this.
Okay.
Like to build this up that you'll appreciate. That Eric's gonna be like, I don't care. But anyway, all right, that's mine. I'm gonna tag Eric in next.
Okay. All right. So I was looking through my compilations and soundtracks and all that thing, and so many of like the samplers and things made a big impact on me, especially like the Tooth and Nail samplers and things like that. So I'm not going to name any particular ones with that. I did include EPs in my prospective list, but none of them made the cut. So I'll just give my 10 honorable mentions that are just basically my 20 through 11 ranked albums, and I brought visuals with me. So
Love it.
See, if I thought about this, I'd have
honorable
been able to
mention is Silence by Blindside.
Ah, nice.
Yeah. Most listeners probably know who Blindside is. Post-hardcore from Sweden.
Dang, I already have one of your top 10 wrong then, because I have that in your top 10.
Oh, well, if this were like 5 years ago, it probably would have, before I started going through and actually rating each track on the albums. It
There you
just
go.
changed my number 19 is Plan's Death Cab for
Yes.
Cutie, which you all will probably have something from that band on there. And then my number 18 would be Let Go by Not a Surf.
Oh, that's a good album.
And my 17 is A Fire So Big the Heavens Can See It, Search the City.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yep, no vinyl edition of that one yet. And number 16 is Numa by Moving to Mountains, which is lately I feel like they're probably my second favorite band behind
Wow.
Falling Up.
Wow.
Yeah. I just wish they would have stuck around longer. 15, New Medicines, Dead Poetic,
I know that record.
which I believe not too long ago when I did my a little over a year ago when I did my original top 100 albums of all time list. I think it was like number 11, and now
Oh,
it's
wow.
not. Now it's number 15, just of the
That
2000s.
may have been what I read, and then going through conversations that I've had with you that helped me make my guest list. So
Oh, okay. Number 14 is The Hammering Process, Living Sacrifice.
Nice.
My favorite, like, real metal album probably ever. And then 13 is Futures, Jimmy Eat World. My favorite Jimmy
Uh,
World album.
yeah, mine too. And it was really painful to cut that from my top 10.
Oh, I'll be
Yeah.
saying more about that album.
Okay. Um, number 12 is Captiva by Falling Up.
Nice.
And then number 11 is The Pursuit Begins When This, what is it? The Pursuit Begins When This Portrayal of Life Ends by Evans Blue.
I don't know that.
I say I don't know that
They
one.
are a, like a alt metal, maybe close. I don't consider them new metal, but some might. From Canada, the lyrics and things are not your typical kind of new metal tough guy kind of thing, and super melodic. I just have it's like, I guess, like Blindside Silence album. Some of the more melodic things on that, I would
Right.
say it's kind of similar to
Okay.
that.
Ooh, that's
And
good.
that's my honorable mentions.
Gosh,
Kylan?
yeah. Already, like just between y'all's honorable mentions, I'm like, this is a tough list.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so mine are not in any particular order. That's okay with everybody. I've got A Mark and Mission, A Brand of Scar by Dashboard Confessional. Interventions and Lullabies by The Format.
Mhm.
Incorporated by the Legion of Doom. I don't know if you guys know about this. So it's not on streaming anywhere. I didn't include it because it's a mashup album.
Yeah, I vaguely remember them, or him.
But it completely blew my mind when I first heard it, because it's most mashups that I've heard have been like dance music, pop music, hip hop. But what Legion of Doom did was mash up like emo and metalcore music. So they've got on that record, you can still listen to it on SoundCloud. One of my favorites is Dangerous Business since 1979, which is Under Oath and Me Without You. They've got Dottie in a Car Crash, which is I'm a Loner, Dottie, a Rebel by the Get Up Kids, and Understanding in a Car Crash by Thursday. Ebola in Memphis, which is Ebola Rama by Every Time I Die, and Memphis Will Be Laid to Waste by Norma Jean. This all just like completely blew my mind when I heard this. And then the one track that I always skipped until recently was, hold on, which one is it? Oh, Lolita's Medicine. It's Lilacs and Lolita by From Autumn to Ashes and New Medicines by Dead Poetic.
Very cool.
That's just that, as someone that was like an amateur DJ for a while and in a bunch of metal bands and stuff and into all the emo music, I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. I've also got Futures by Jimmy World is on my honorable mentions. Two Conversations by Appleseed Cast.
Oh.
It was hard to narrow down. I tried to narrow down because the hardest thing, because I was telling you guys before we started, was like so many bands that I love, like the 2000s were their like biggest run. And so if I I had to just include like one album, like I just did one Death Cab album because otherwise that would make up over half my list. And Appleseed Cast was the same way.
Is that the album with Fight Song on it?
Yes.
Okay, Fight Song is like my favorite from
Yes,
them.
it's
fantastic.
Yeah, it's my favorite Appleseed Cast song.
Yeah.
So good. I've also got Boxer by The National. I feel like my favorite band had to make a showing somehow, although I prefer like Boxer is so good. I prefer everything High Violet after. But it had to make it at least in honorable mentions.
That's in my top 50.
Yeah. Mean Everything to Nothing by Manchester Orchestra.
Wow.
That was my first Manchester that I ever heard.
I considered I'm Like a Virgin Losing a Child, like that album.
Yeah.
That was my introduction to them, and I quite like that.
Actually, I had a conversation with Josh about Manchester recently. It's going to be on our Church Names Now Patreon. But how him and I are both kind of squarely, I feel like you've got like early Manchester fans and later Manchester fans, and we're like the weirdly like squarely in the middle, like Simple Math, Cope, Hope, all that.
Mine's like U-shaped. I like the like Virgin Losing a Child,
Yeah.
and then I jump back in with the latest style. Like
Oh,
latest
yeah.
release.
That's so funny. Yeah. I've got Digital Ash and a Digital Urn by Bright Eyes.
Uh-huh.
Then I got two more. Mass Romantic by the New Pornographers.
Oh.
My Slow Descent into Alcoholism is like one of my favorite songs. That would probably make a list of like my favorite songs.
That might be next, man. That might be after we get through all the decades. We might go back and
I
do
think we're gonna
song
have to.
versions.
Yeah.
Oof. And then my last honorable mention is Give Up by the Postal Service. That is, it was
We'll
really
be talking about that one.
Okay, it was really painful to cut from my top 10. And Eric knows, because Eric, you just asked on Twitter, what are albums that are like 10 out of 10? Like, absolutely every song's perfect, and that's how I feel about Give Up. So it was hard to cut it from my top 10, but those are my honorable mentions.
Very nice. On the topic of every song being 5 stars, I was pleasantly surprised at how many people only mentioned 2 to 5 albums, because I feel like any more than that, and I have to question your methodology of giving songs 5
Right.
stars, because for me there's 2, I think, that I would say that about. So yeah. Anyways, I'll talk about those albums in the 2010s episode, I'm sure.
Ooh, okay.
I have a question for you though. Can you have a 5-star album without every track being 5 stars? Because some of the songs are so up there.
So what I do is, if I give it a score over a 9, if I were doing by point system like Pitchfork does, if I was giving it a 9.6 or over, I would give that a 5 star, because just to round up. So Josh Baylog and some other people used to give me a little bit of a hard time because of how strict I was with my 5-star albums. So I've loosened up a little bit, but yeah, any of them that I would could round up to 5 stars would be there. If I were doing true 5-star albums, there would definitely be less than 10, but
Oh, wow.
I would think. Anyways, so I asked our friend Josh Baylog if he would like to contribute a list. I invited him on, but he couldn't make it. But he did provide us with a list.
I don't want to talk to him anyway.
Yeah.
JoshBaylog.wordpress.com if you are unfamiliar with his lists and writing.
He should have been here instead of me. He's an actual list guy. I'm a vibe guy. That's like, oh, okay, all right.
I think I'm closer to you than I am to Eric and Josh. I think, where I'm just 5 stars. Why? I dig it.
Nothing says more vibe guy than, I didn't number mine. I'll just figure it out as I go.
I know. It's so funny because we give TJ on Church James Now so much crap for treating lists like this, and then I just turn around as soon as I'm not on Church James Now and do the same thing.
So you should just try to act like it was a bit. Like that,
Right.
you're like, you know what? I am slowly taking over DCMT as part of the Church Jams Now.
We're gonna absorb DCMT and just
this is a thing. I'm gonna play this character.
Should have.
Anyways, so Josh gave me 5 honorable mentions and his top 10. His honorable mentions are Down Here's self-titled album, Continuum by John Mayer, Visu by Thrice, Mute Math self-titled, Forget and Not Slow Down by Reliant K. Those are his honorable mentions. And then his top 10, he has number 10 is No Name Face by Lifehouse, number 9, Good Monsters by Jars of Clay, number 8, Bleed American by Jimmy Eat World, number 7, The Everglow by May, number 6, The End Is Not the End by House of Heroes. Number 5, Long Line of Leavers by Caedmon's Call. Number 4, Divine Discontent by Sixpence None the Richer. Number 3, by Reliant K. Number 2, Parachutes by Coldplay. Number 1, The Beautiful Letdown by Switchfoot.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Solid
And-
top 10. We're done
Yeah.
here. We don't need to continue. I think. Yeah.
So one person who is not, I've tried for literally like a decade now to get him on Twitter. His name is David Martin, and he is, as far as music writers go, he is the most influential on me. He keeps a blog at merlot23.wordpress.com. I'll put it in the notes or description or whatever. But he has turned me on to so much music, and he does yearly lists and decades lists and all that. So I snagged his 2000s decade list off his blog, and I was just going to read that off just because
Yeah.
Sweet.
he's the master list maker and music writer.
Well, if he
Yeah, so-
disagrees with me, he's obviously not. So
Number 10, he has Michigan by Sufjan Stevens.
Wow.
Number 9, All the Houses Look the Same by Deus Vale.
okay.
Yeah.
A man of culture.
Yeah. He's been very influential on my taste. He may have actually been the one who turned me on to Deus Vale.
Nice.
Number 8, Church Music by David Crowder Band. Number 7, Waking Hour by Vienna Ting. Number 6, The Shepherd's Dog by Iron and Wine. Number 5, Open Sky by Iona. Number 4, Fleet Foxes self-titled. Number 3, Absence by Paper Route.
Oh.
Oh wow.
Number 2, Dreaming Through the Noise by Vienna Ting. Number 1, Illinois by Sufjan Stevens.
Okay.
And I bought my vinyl copy of Illinois by Sufjan Stevens from the guy who played guitar on the Play Radio Play album, who is on an album in my top 10.
I love that.
But when a plan comes together, it's all connected.
Yep.
Mhm. It's
All right, so I guess we'll go around and starting with number 10. AJ, you want to go first?
Sure. Mine's going to be, I think, the most random. So mine is the 2006 self-titled From Nightmare of You.
Oh my God! Yes. Oh,
Right,
that
okay.
album is so good.
Yeah, so you know that. Do you know who they are, Eric? Have you ever heard
I know
of them?
I know the name. I don't know
I
if
want to
I've
be
ever
buried in your
listened to 'em.
backyard.
Yes,
Oh,
we'll be
dude.
talking about that. So, like,
that album
Nightmare
is
of
so
You
good.
is internally incohesive in their sound, right, Kylan? Like, they're all over
Yeah.
the place. Like, I text you about, like, hey, when you're kind of talking about your stuff, I was like, hey, I've got a band in my top 10 that, like, is chaos.
Right.
It's them, right? Like, across their music, they are sounding like The Cure, The Smiths, New Order, country music, punk rock, jazz music, 2000s indie music, right? Like, it is
Wow.
this weird, diverse range, and I think that that's, like, why they didn't hit it bigger, because, like,
Right.
you're like, oh, I really love this song. I want to hear more like that. And they're like, yeah, we don't do that.
No, we don't do that anymore. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But, like, given the chaos that I listen to, this album makes sense, right? Like,
Totally
the
does,
wide
yeah.
span, you're like, yeah, this is like a best of the genres of music that I like. But I do think it probably made this album hard to market, that band hard to market. But it is wonderful chaos.
It really
They
is.
have a track, and I love this so much, that they were part of, like, the indie hipster scene in New York. They have a track on there making fun of the
Dear Scene,
hipster
I wish
scene.
you were. Yeah, I wish you were deaf.
Yeah, yeah.
Dead,
And then they
deaf,
have another
yeah.
one making fun of the emo punk scene, which
Okay.
I absolutely love. Like, I grew up adjacent to those, again, friends in both of those, and I was, like, somewhere in the middle,
Mhm.
but on a lot of that. Tracks that I particularly like and recommend are I Want to Be Buried in Your Backyard, My Name is Trouble, and then Dear Scene, I Wish I Were Deaf.
Mhm.
Are three of them, but again, I Want to Be Buried in Your Backyard is very much more like a Smiths type song,
It's
I think,
super,
from them.
Yeah.
Super Morrissey, right?
Mhm.
My Name is Trouble is more like a New Order tune, and then Dear Scene, I Wish I Were Deaf is like very early 2000s indie music, and then it's them making fun of early 2000s indie fans.
The highest compliment I can give them is my dad hated all of the music I listened to in high school because I would always play my CDs in his car, and Nightmare of You, he ended up stealing that CD. And
Oh,
like he
wow.
doesn't listen to music, and he's like, I really like this.
What record label were they on?
Genuinely don't know. No clue.
That's a good question.
have
I'm
to
terrible
look that
about
up.
that stuff for the most part. Unless, like, there's a really strong label brand, like I tend to know like what bands are on Tooth and Nail.
Yeah.
Right.
It says on Spotify. I literally just looked on Spotify. The Devonshire label. So
Oh, wow.
I think that does come to mind because again, I think that was my reaction seeing that label. I was like, the what?
Yeah, I would
Right.
have thought they would have been on something
But yeah,
a
I
little
think
bigger than that.
why I really love this album is it's basically a compilation album of all the genres of music I like.
Yep.
So that's my number
cool.
10.
Very cool.
I'm shocked you were the first person again, Kylan, that I've met that.
With the
knows who they
exception of
are.
Jars of Clay, we've got so much overlap
So
that
much
we
to
agree on.
agree on, yeah. I'll tag, whoever next.
I'll go next. My number 10 is the guy who I've already mentioned several times, who played on Play Radio Play and sold me his Sufjan vinyl. Waking Giants by Life in Your Way.
Oh, wow. I haven't
yeah.
heard that in a long time.
Yeah, it's my favorite hardcore album. I guess melodic hardcore, I'd say.
You played on melodic hardcore album and Play Radio Play. That's Kylan?
Yeah, right? I know.
And he also has like a kind of indie-ish side project too. He can do a little bit of everything, I guess. But some of the best live shows I ever saw were like seeing them in a YMCA conference room.
Nice.
Playing on the floor, being in the front. And I was so excited to see them at Furnace Fest a couple years ago when they reunited and played a show for the first time in a long time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, there were a few years, probably from like 2007 to 2010, that I wore their stuff out. They only had 3 albums at the time. So I was like, I need more of this. And I found every band I could find who was influenced by Life in Your Way and, ate all that up too. So their sound was really hitting for me at that time.
I love that.
Cool. Kylan, what's your number 10?
My number 10 is the 2003 album "Who Will Cut Our Hair When We're Gone" by the Unicorns.
I did not know that one.
Okay.
Most people don't. The guy.
No, that's out of left field, but yes.
Oh yeah. The guy Nick, I don't remember his last name now. He went on to do Islands. I don't know if you know the band Islands.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Heavenly, that is kind of indie supergroup where Michael Cera played bass for a while.
Oh.
But Who Will Cut Our Hair When We're Gone. So the Unicorn, they're just like real kind of, jangly lo-fi. Like, it was such an inspiration for me to hear like, oh, you can have really crappy recordings and still just like make fun music and like release it. They have a song called "I Was Born a Unicorn," which is very, very, very
I was
silly.
actually getting ready to say that one. That is the one I remember.
Yeah, that whole album is so good though, and I have to take this opportunity to say their first run. I don't have it in the basement, but their first run vinyl pressings of that album are like super rare, not like crazy, but like on average they're selling for like $100+ on eBay. And about 5 years ago, and I had just mentioned this offhandedly, like that was from the moment I started collecting vinyl. That was like a holy grail vinyl for me, and my wife got it for me for my birthday one year. So I own like an original pink pressing of Who Will Cut Our Hair When We're Gone. It's so good. It's
Very
such
cool.
a weird album. It's definitely not for everybody. I'm not coming on here to like recommend it to people, but at least just go listen to "I Was Born a Unicorn." It's very fun.
Oh, we'll do that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It is some fun, weird, quirky indie pop that I don't remember specifics about who I knew that liked it, but I remember like immediately I was like, oh, I'm gonna like you.
Yeah.
Like, you're weird. You're weird in a way that matches my weird.
Yeah.
This is gonna be a good time.
And I got a little more weird coming up later on the list. So
fantastic.
I'm excited to look into the ones that I don't know from your all's list. AJ, you want to give your number 9?
Sure. So my number 9 is the 2006 Girls and Boys by Ingrid Michaelson. So I had have you guys heard this
Oh,
before
yeah.
I go into my spiel? Okay.
Uh-huh.
So I had a massive crush on Ingrid Michaelson,
Well,
and
yeah,
right, like I mean, like I'm so shy, apologetic, weird white guy,
Yeah,
like who
exactly.
didn't, right? Like,
It was like,
you know,
oh, Regina Spektor's like maybe a little too intense for me, but Ingrid Michaelson seems approachable.
Regina Spektor, yes, I like her music quite a bit too, but
I do
like
too, but
I
she
had
scared
such
me
a
a little bit.
I had like such a crush on her and such a fan of her music that my wife still will joke like if we're in a shop or something and Ingrid Michaelson comes on, she's like, "Oh, they're playing your girlfriend." Right. And of my top 50 of this decade, 3 of her albums, like this and 2 more, are in my top 50 of the album. It's such a beautiful album, I think. To the point that I was fortunate enough to have a much more talented musician of a friend form a band with me for a few years, and it was ridiculous because he was like classically trained and knew his stuff, and like I was maybe a mediocre punk guitarist and like an okay punk bassist. And so it was like a weird mashup also like for many ways, but I convinced him to go with the name Four Cornered Heart for the band after her song Corner of Your Heart and on this album.
Nice.
And then I proceeded to also like trick him into helping me write our own take on that song. It's a very endearing, somewhat pathetic song about how much you love someone and how far you're willing to like simply go to have them in your life. Out of the dozen or so songs that he and I wrote, like this is one of my favorites. But super cool, super awesome album, like very introspective, very 2000s indie.
Yeah.
Beyond Corner of Your Heart, I'd say Die Alone, December Baby, and The Way I Am are tracks that I like on there. Since you both have actually heard of this, like, do you have other tracks that you like or thoughts on the album or anything like that?
I have not listened to that album in so long. Hold on, I gotta look it up and see if there's anything that
I try to limit like my recommendations to, like 3, maybe 4 tracks and stuff, but it's like I don't know. There's probably 8 tracks on here that I really like.
Yeah, I can't remember if I ever actually heard any of her full albums. I know I had a CD or 2 of hers before I reduced my collection, but I liked Winter Song that she did with Sarah Bareilles, that was always on So You Think You Can Dance. Like it was like every one dancer every episode dance to that song. And I think that may have actually been how I first heard about Ingrid Michaelson. But yeah, I'm not sure if I've heard that album.
I put The Hat on a mix CD for a girl I liked in college. I remember that. This is like pulling out all kinds of core memories that I had repressed from my...
I told you, this threw me in the Wayback Machine, putting this together, right? But yeah, so that's my number 9.
Number 9, I love it. Eric, what about you?
My number 9 is the band that I first remember having a conversation with AJ about on Twitter, and that is The Things We've Grown to Love by All the Day Holiday. Cincinnati
one right.
band.
Got one in the top 10. All
right. Kind of like reminds me of like the big singles from the first Meat Meth album, like what's Control and Typical. They kind of give me vibes like that. They don't get as experimental as Meat Meth did, but they just write good pop rock songs with some pretty cool instrumentation and drumming. Flowers and Fireworks might be my favorite song of the 2000s. We'll have to see when me and AJ do our list, but it's definitely a contender.
See, I would draw attention to Real Time.
That one, they're all good.
Have you heard of that?
I don't know this at all.
Okay.
I already wrote it down though. So
I saw them play on a tour with Love Drug. Eric and I have talked about that one before because a friend of mine's band was the local opener for that tour, and I think it went them and then Love Drug. But yeah, I heard them live and immediately I was like, I V-line to their merch, and I was like, I will be taking this CD. I will be taking a T-shirt.
Nice. Nice.
I also was first turned on to them by seeing them live open for May.
Cool.
Just put on a great show. So yeah, I'd say they only put out an EP and they put out the one album,
and then they did.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, this album's in my top, I think, 15. Like this album just missed my cut.
I was curious if it would make yours or not.
Because yeah, it is so cool and sort of Angels and Airwavesy, but maybe less pretentious.
I can dig that.
Like more focused. That's like, okay, we're gonna have a 3 to 4 minute song, where we get our stuff in and then we get out. So,
yeah, I agree with that.
They don't hill song.
No.
Which is ultimately my biggest problem with Angels and Airwaves. Is like, just if Hillsong believed in aliens. Okay, my number 9. You guys ready?
Yes.
You guys ready for some more weirdo music?
Ready.
In Case
Clearly
We Die by Architecture in Helsinki from 2005. This was also another. It's sort of in the same vein as Who Will Cut Our Hair. Bunch of weirdo music from Australia. They're like. They do the thing that my wife says her favorite thing in music is weird little noises. And that describes Architecture in Helsinki to a T. They've got a song called It's 5 that it literally sounds like a song from like Sesame Street, like talking about the number 5, but it's completely earnest. Like it's like, well, they opened the album Never Ever Ever Did with like this weird like 3-minute orchestral like chamber piece with like operatic singing. It's like so weird. It gets into this like weird indie rock kind of stuff, but there's also The Cemetery is absolutely my favorite song by them, followed by Frenchie I'm Faking. It's just weird, dude. I got nothing else that's weird. Once again, not for everybody, but for the people it's for, it's really for.
I mean, it's
I need
like
to make a
Unicorns.
playlist as we go, so I remember all this stuff.
It's kind of like the Unicorns for me. Of like, I know them. I remember listening to some of their music, and I remember going, "Yeah, this is a little further out than even I'm into."
It's weird. It's super weird.
AJ, what is your number 8?
My number 8 is the 2007 A Weekend in the City album from Block Party.
Yep.
So it's maybe a bit of an odd pick, right? Like people at Block Party in particular like their first album, right? Silent Alarm tends to get a lot more love, and actually just again finished outside of my top 10. This album is like introspective, frantic, angry, self-aware, really vulnerable. Like the first album, he's writing in abstraction a ton, right? Where like, this is a metaphor and stuff. And the second one, he's like, oh no, I'm pissed off. And like, I'm specifically going to call this out, and I'm specifically going to express parts of my identity very clearly and explain how like living in Britain impacts those identities. So I really appreciate that, right? Like it's a huge tonal and sound shift too. Like the first one is very much like Silent Alarm is very much like Gang of Four with like the spiky guitars and like very much post-punk, and like they somehow on this one like land at like the Smiths meets Husker Du meets like the Prodigy.
Yeah. That's a really good.
It's fun. It's a ton of fun. And they had so much material that they could have released a double album, but instead made it like a bunch of B-sides. Like this Japanese album had this version, and the iTunes edition had this, and Target had this, and like turned into like a hunt for fans.
Oh, that used to drive me crazy.
I had all of that. And the latest freaking iPhone update took those off of my phone.
Oh no!
And I now have to go find that laptop that has it, which is an old one. So I'm a little frustrated by that. But yeah, again, I know Silent Alarm gets a lot of attention, but I really like it's like they moved into the next gear in this album, and then kind of went off in a weird way for a while. But favorites on here are I Still Remember, The Prayer, Crowdsburg, and Sunday. Like I Still Remember in particular is excellent, and then you probably heard like Crowdsburg in the background on a lot of shows where they're trying to really stress like high emotion to like a
Right,
slowed
right.
down. I wouldn't say like the OCs use it. I wouldn't say like Grey's Anatomy's used it. It's like this like like trying to be like immediately gut punch and be like, I don't know, is the person gonna live or die that they're running towards in the hospital? Yeah, so that's my number 8.
That's good.
How about you, Eric?
Very nice. My number 8 is Divine Discontent by Sixpence None the Richer.
Ah, nice.
Share that one with Josh, who had it at number 4. I was kind of late to this one. Like, I knew Sixpence, obviously, and had heard their stuff from the 90s, but then 2002 was when this came out. At that time, I think I was starting to get into, like, I was already past my POD phase and into, like, Project A6 and Blindside and moving into, like, metalcore stuff. So, like, I was all about the heavy around the time when this came out and totally missed it. One of the music communities that I'm pretty active on is Rate Your Music, and I saw that this was unusually highly rated for an album to come out of the Christian music scene, even though they did have, a lot of mainstream fans at this point. So I picked it up and fell in love with it. Just a lot of really pretty songs, I guess. I
don't know it at all. I can't tell you a single song from it. So
if you like just like standard pop rock songs with just well written, pretty vocals, and that's my number 8.
It's going on the CJN board.
There you go. Do it.
All right, my number 8. We're gonna go with "Fantasies" by Metric, 2009.
Oh, that nearly made mine and almost got thrown in as an honorable mention.
Yeah, it was one of those. So the way I do my list is like, especially when I'm doing like top 10 songs, like with my wife and stuff. When the competition is so fierce, it's like if something I feel belongs in a specific spot over something else, it's not like I'm going to push that original thing down. It just doesn't make the list, unfortunately. So this actually pushed out None Shall Pass by Aesop Rock, which was sort of my introduction to like intellectual hip hop, I guess. But Metric, I had to go with Fantasies. I mean, Give Me Sympathy is like just one of the greatest like indie synth pop songs of all time.
So who do you want to be, the Beatles or the Rolling Stones?
I ask myself this all the time. Give me sympathy, guys. I would rather be the Beatles. Just die young. Get it over with. I mean everything. Help I'm Alive is like a perfect.
I was getting ready
to
specifically cite that. Yeah, Help Me Alive is an excellent intro.
It's so good. I love it. This is one that's like it's a road trip staple for me.
Okay.
So
it's a good one.
Yeah. It's good. It was hard to narrow this list down. This was so hard. I'm still a little mad about it.
Number 7. AJ's number 7.
Oh, number 7. Okay. So I actually text Eric about this one because I was re-listening to it to make sure I had it right. This is 2005 Harmonies for the Haunted by Stella Star.
I don't know this.
Okay, so this album is such like an incredible goth post-punk alternative collection, and it's a bit of a departure. Eric, you said you'd listen to like Stella.
I did
Stella
listen
Star,
to it,
and that's like much more poppy and stuff like that. This sounds like somewhere between like Smashing Pumpkins, Joy Division, and The Cure. So like, no kidding that I like it.
It gave me Interpol vibes.
Yes, so like they're part of that incredible New York scene. As somebody like that often makes fun of New York, like the early to mid 2000s music scene in New York is incredible with like Interpol and Stella Star and Elephant and Nightmare of You and Yeah Yeah Yeahs and The Strokes and like so on and so forth. Like begrudgingly, I have to give like New York City from like 20 years ago a lot of respect. But yeah, like this is such an interesting album because like the guitars are sometimes dreamy, sometimes spiky, sometimes distorted. They all have like a pop sensibility of them, again, you're like, okay, another band might take this to like a 6 or 7 minute song, but so it's like, we're cutting it off at 4. We're getting our stuff in, and we're getting out. And you can sing along to all of it. You can dare say dance to some of it. But there's like a lot of dark emotions in the lyrics. It's heavy, again, very Cure, Joy Division, Smashing Pumpkins, but with maybe some New Order thrown in there to get a little dancey. It's this like really weird contrast that I love. And I'll also say this, because the album is not on Apple Music. That is usually my default way of listening to music. It is one of the few CDs that I have in my truck that is not from like somebody I know, like their own band, because it's like, nope, I need to have access to this in my truck. Standout tracks, and again, Eric, I'll be curious to hear your thoughts, but like Sweet Troubled Soul, Damn This Foolish Heart, sorry if you need to bleep that first one, that's the song title. And Love and Longing. Like, I remember the first time I heard Sweet Troubled Soul, I think it was the video was played on Fuse, when Fuse was like incredible.
Fuse,
right? Like, my gosh. And there was like this shot of adrenaline in like the 80s, like alternative loving teenage heart of mine, like the eyes got big scene and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Gosh, I mean, I would have been 18 when this came out. But I'll be curious to hear, Eric, since you just checked it out, what did you think?
I liked it. I especially loved the first song where it was real kind of epic and dreamy.
I had that thought re-listening to that.
Yeah.
That's actually, I think, maybe what why I text you. I was like, this sounds like The Cure at their most like dreamy.
Yeah, definitely. I was really into that, so much that I was a little disappointed when it fell into the more post-punk, less dreamy. Probably so. I mean, I liked it. I did like it.
When it moved from Jason Martin to Ronnie Martin.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I did enjoy it though.
But it is a departure for them, I feel like, and even the follow-up doesn't quite go like this one did.
I think I only listened to I think it was the album before this one that I listened to, and I maybe listened to it once or twice. So I don't even really have. That was a long time ago, so I don't even have much recollection of the band except that I've heard them.
See, so like you heard their first album first, and then this. I heard this, and then their first album, and I was like, "What is this?" The My Coco song that was on like FIFA. I was like, "What in the world is this?" Like, this is not my like weird indie goth band. Like, what in the world? So I actually like did not like their first album the first time I listened to it, because it was so different than Harmonies for the Haunted, their second album. So
I think I did like, if my memory is correct, I did like Harmonies for the Haunted more than that first album. If I remember
there you go.
correctly.
So Kylan, you got something to check out.
Yeah, I know. I already added it.
It's on Spotify. It's not on Apple Music.
I know. I already added it.
AJ, remind me what your number 9 was. I'm making a playlist as we go.
Oh, let me go up to that's Ingrid Michaelson. Girls and Boys.
Okay.
And then 8 was Block Party, Weekend in the City. 7 was Stella Star. I mean, I think you're seeing the genre, like that you get like these like weird kids that were like, oh, their parents listened to 80s alternative music. Got it. I think Eric, you're up.
Yeah, my number 7 is North by, I believe you say it, Log, Logh.
I don't know this.
I got another one. Another one, right?
They're a Swedish band. I very much like bands from Sweden for some reason.
They write good music, especially like poppy, dreamy music that you like.
Exactly. This reminds me. Most of their albums are a little more indie rock. One of them even goes a little bit post rock. This one is like, it almost reminds me of Coldplay, but it's just like gorgeous music. This is my go-to when the weather first starts getting cold. It's called North. It sounds, the music sounds like the cover looks. I would say it's.
I checked it out after seeing it on your list.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I agree. And I would almost describe like the Harmonies for the Haunted as like a winter album too.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's good music.
This is wild.
I got that one right. I knew that would be in your top 10.
Did you? You got that one? Nice.
I'm looking at on Spotify. They have the fans also like for Log, and this is literally, I think, the first time I've ever been on that page on Spotify where I don't recognize a single band.
They didn't make it in the US. Like they were
Okay.
on a record label. I can't remember what it was called. Hydra Head. Does that sound right? That had some pretty big bands, but I don't think I found their music in a discount bin like for 89 cents or something, one of their other albums, and I liked it enough to check out their other stuff and fell
That's
in
the
love with this one.
best. There was one album that just barely didn't make my list, but Several Arrows Later by Matt Pond PA,
Yeah.
that you find one of those in like a bargain bin. You're just like, oh, this album art is really intriguing, and then you find like, oh my gosh, I love everything about this. That's like the best feeling.
Yeah, and those hit maybe like 1 out of 10 times, but when it
Yeah,
does,
exactly.
it's like, yes.
Exactly.
A lot of bad, and then you're like, holy cow, I found a diamond in the rough here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kylan, what's your number 7?
All right, so we're getting all my weirdo picks out of the way.
Okay.
Picaresque by the Decemberists, 2005.
Okay.
That was my introduction to the Decemberists.
I need to look up this track listing real quick because like I loved some December. If you took all the Decemberist albums, I could put together like a concert set list that I would really enjoy.
Yeah.
So
So they really hit with like the Crane Wife, but Picaresque was like, it starts with the Infanta, which starts with like this weird like bugle kind of sound, but it's got The Sporting Life, 16 Military Wives, I think is my favorite Decemberist song, the Mariner's Revenge song, which is their
we
like
both
9
go down
minute...
together.
Yeah. I still to this day cover Eli the Barrow Boy at shows whenever I play shows.
That is a quirky, weird, like I don't even know how to describe what that sounds like. That like the Decemberists in general just seem like an old like timey vaudeville act almost.
Right. Well, and they were like so literary, and like so this came out. I was a junior in high school, and so I was like peak like pretentious like, oh, I'm currently reading War and Peace, and I love all the
was your favorite author.
like exactly. And so it's like all these like super literary cinematic references. So it hit me perfectly. And I remember specifically because I wasn't allowed to listen to music that had cursing, but they have a song on the album called "Of Angels and Angles," or no, it's not that one. The one on the Bus Mall. He says we never let the bastards get us down. And I was listening to it in the car with my dad, and I convinced him that they were a British band and that they used that word differently, so it wasn't really a curse word.
Well done.
Yeah. So yeah,
they're a really cool, quirky, weird band. I think I like more of their stuff like later. Like Here I Dream as an Architect. Like that is super cool, super awesome song. The Crane Wife stuff later on. But yeah, like looking back through this, like there's some good tracks on here. I can't tell you what album those songs are on. Again, I'm like I like somewhere between probably 12 to 15 of their songs. Like really like.
Well, the fun fact too about this album, and something that I realized, a big part of my 2000s listening, it shares this with another album on my list, and that it was produced by Chris Walla from Death Cab.
Wow. Oh, I think, all right.
Yeah. So that was like, I basically like Death Cab was like it's like, oh, I want to figure out everything about this, or like, what else do they do? So like, then I found Postal Service, and then I found Dentel because of Postal Service, and then I found like Chris Walla produced this album and this album, and so
his solo stuff is really good.
So good.
But then Narrow Stairs is so bad he got kicked out of the band.
Hey, he still did. Hey, well, we're gonna have a whole other conversation. We'll save that for another time.
For the record, I have no idea if that's entirely true, but I think that Ben Gibbard was like, we want to move in a different direction.
But he still did
studio.
Kintsugi, which was their album after, but he was pretty much out by that point.
No, there's an album between there. Codes and Keys.
Oh, Codes. Everyone. Yeah, I always forget about Codes and Keys.
But I mean, like Narrow Stairs was so bad that I loved Death Cab, and it made me like not love Death Cab.
That's wild. That's one of my favorite Death Cab records.
Are we talking about this later?
No, yeah. Sorry. All right.
No, you're good.
Number 6.
Number 6. Okay, I think this is an overlap with Kylan, maybe. And that's The Con by Tegan and Sara.
Hey, there it is.
All right, so
Chris Walla produced.
Yes. This album kicks off like an incredible 3-album run for Tegan and Sara, right? The Con, Sainthood, Heartthrob.
Yep.
Fantastic album. They're like really vulnerable, they're really dark, but there's like a vibrancy. There's like late teens, early 20s where you're like sort of hopeful, but like the cynicism is starting to come in a little bit, and you hear that. It's fun, but thoughtful. It's indie pop, but like still kind of got an edge to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the perfect album for like an anxious, hopeless, romantic person in the late teens and 20s, like me when this album dropped.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually didn't write down the year on this one, so I'm gonna guess 2007.
It is indeed 2007.
All right, there we go. This fun fact that I mentioned earlier, diving through all this, Kylan, is that putting together this list, thanks, I got a side quest from my KS goblin that I call my brain. 80% of my favorite Tegan and Sara songs are in fact Tegan songs.
Oh, interesting. So you're a little more Tegan than Sara.
Apparently, a little bit, yeah. I think that came up because I was looking at the track listing for The Con, and it actually lists specifically, I think this is the last album that they explicitly were like, this is a Tegan song, this is a Sara song. After that, like, you have to go and dig and like find interviews and stuff. Yeah. But I was looking at that and my brain was like, well, I wonder, let's go through all of the songs you like by them. And I got on a side quest and found that out. It's actually 81%. But,
there you go.
Our Tegan songs, and yet my favorite Tegan and Sara song is a Sara song. So
what's your favorite?
I'm Not Your Hero.
Oh, nice. That's a good one.
Yes.
That's really good.
But favorites on this album include Back in Your Head, 19, Pop a Plane, and The Con.
Yeah, those are all
all great. 3 of those 4 are Tegan tracks. Back in Your Head has some sentimental value because my now wife and I early on had a little rough spot, and I made the mixtape, and Back in Your Head was on there.
I love that.
And so it is, I think, a favorite of hers and I's because it was like, again, this says a lot about me. That one, I made a mixtape or mix CD, and 2, Tegan and Sara's Back in Your Head was on there.
Dude, Back in Your Head was the first song that I bought to be a ringtone on my phone when that was like a thing you could like pay 99 cents.
Yeah, you had to pay money. It's ridiculous. Mine was
for a custom ringtone. So, yeah.
Eric, have you heard this album?
Yeah, you guys are probably not gonna like my opinion on this album. I didn't care for it, and I liked Sainthood, and I loved Heartthrob.
Okay.
I know I've always known that The Con is their most acclaimed album, so I'm not really sure why.
Do you like So Jealous? Have you listened to the one before this one?
No.
There's some transition going on.
Yeah, you might like
there.
So Jealous if you don't like The Con.
To be fair, Sainthood finished at 11. I think it was on my list at 12. And depending on the day, Sainthood and The Con might switch out. Like this whole list, like the top 20 could probably interchange. Let's be real.
Yeah. I'm going to give it another try now. I think I only listened to it once or twice. So I mean, and that's been a long time ago. So
do it back to back. Do So Jealous into The Con and see if that flavors your.
I think that makes sense. And I'll also say, like, the most bipolar songs on there, the ones that you're like, oh, this is lovely and beautiful, and then super aggressive, those are Tegan. The ones that are like most evenly like mentally like stable and like maybe even artistically interesting, that's Sara. Yeah. But you're like, Tegan, you okay?
Yeah.
Yesterday you wrote something very beautiful and very pretty, and then today you wrote North Shore.
Right.
So, all right, that's my number 6. What about you?
My number 6 is The Artist in the Ambulance by Thrice.
I got another one right.
Nice. This was the first time I think that I listened to post-hardcore knowing it was post-hardcore. Like I had listened to Project A6 and Blindside before, which both have a little bit of that.
Right.
I saw this album was on the metal charts back then because I used to scour the charts of everything, and looked it up and I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. So I went and bought the CD and fell in love with the album and the genre, and just hits all the way through.
That's great. It's a good album. We covered that on Church James Now.
Yeah, I remember that. What was you gonna say?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, I was gonna say, I was gonna ask like, what are some tracks that you would suggest?
Oh,
I usually like hearing those.
The title track is great. Stare at the Sun.
Stare at the Sun's just a classic.
Yeah, that was my MySpace page before I finally abandoned it. Had my name, and I don't know if you remember the trend of like you put something after your name in parentheses.
Oh yeah,
like
dude.
Mine said like Eric is staring at the sun.
So good.
And I think that was my profile song or something like that.
That's so good.
Yeah. So, what's your number 6, Kylan?
Pretty cool.
My number 6 is "The Execution of All Things" by Rilo Kiley from 2002.
Oh yes.
Another
Jenny Lewis.
Yeah, I found it was a couple days ago. You know, the Facebook memories thing pops up, and I had from like 2010. My status was Jenny Lewis is my spirit animal. This album.
So you have a rabbit fur coat?
I do. Yeah. It's my dog loves it. So it was really hard to pick a Rilo Kiley record between this and More Adventurous. Those are both so good. This one, though, what takes it over the top for me is track number 6, "A Better Son/Daughter." Hands down, my favorite Rilo Kiley song. And you guys ever have those moments where you're either like watching a movie or listening to music and they express something that feels absolutely so specific to you that you wonder if you're being spied on, right? Like, how did you 1,000 miles away from me get this exact thought out of my brain and articulate it? That's how I feel about "A Better Son/Daughter."
I need to go back and re-listen to that then.
It's so good. It's so sad.
I mean, yeah, so much of their stuff is though, right?
So sad. But like, and specifically like, you know, like being a performer and stuff, like she has the line, and I'll bleep it, Eric. It's sometimes when you're on, you're really fucking on. Your friends all sing along and they love you, but the lows are so extreme that the good seems fucking cheap and it teases you for weeks in its absence. I'm just like, like right through the heart, man. Like,
the fact that you remember that entirety, like,
no, that's like
incredible.
That's like tattooed on my soul as a resident sad boy. Yeah, so that's mine.
No, that is a solid album. I'll be curious. I used to kind of see them almost like an indie Fleetwood Mac in some ways. And I've never had the opportunity to ask another Rilo Kiley fan if that is something that seems fair-ish.
Yeah, I think so.
Like 70s Fleetwood Mac?
Yeah, I think so.
Especially the album, like Under the Blacklight, really sounds like 70s.
Right. It's like they're like it's you know, because they're like an LA band, but Under the Blacklight is their most like LA sounding album.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, like a weird indie rock Fleetwood Mac. I could see that. I like that. I never really considered that. I gotta ask my wife too what she thinks.
Again, I have never had somebody else to ask this to. So.
Big Jenny Lewis fans over here.
I'm gonna have to. I've never listened to a whole album of theirs. I'd have various Saddle Creek samplers and things that would have their songs on them, but I'll have to check this one out.
I'm trying to think. I think I like More Adventurous the most of their albums, if I'm remembering right, like Portions for Foxes. Does He Love You? Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I think More
Absence of God.
Adventurous.
Like, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that's I
For me.
think ultimately I like More Adventurous as an album more, but Better Son Daughter just looms so
Hit.
large for me that it
This
had to take precedent.
this goes to the question of like in certain songs like carry an album higher than other tracks and like Offset maybe something. No, I agree. That makes
think
sense
so.
to me.
All right, that was what was that? 6?
Yes.
6.
Ooh, we're getting into top 5.
Uh-huh.
AJ, what's your number 5?
My number 5, and we're getting to a very specific state now. 2007, Chase This Light, Jimmy Eat World. So like
that's a good one.
Yeah, like as a kid from the alternative scene in Arizona, like I have a natural inclination to love Jimmy Eat World. I'm fairly certain I would like get kicked out of my home state. I don't live there anymore, but I'm from Arizona. But it's arguably an absolutely excellent alternative rock album, right? It's full of emotion and like powerful music. Like the more anthematic tunes like hit you in the stomach, and then the lyrics to all of the songs like hit you in the heart. It feels like Late American, but like cranked up and more powerful, in my opinion, both like musically and emotionally. So you both know it. Do you have thoughts on it?
I don't know if there's ever been another album that I turned so drastically from not liking to loving. I hated the production the first time I listened to it.
I did too. I was ready for Futures Part 2.
Yeah, me too. I was very into Futures when it came out.
Yeah.
But yeah, thankfully I kept giving it another try to where now it's probably my second favorite Jimmy Eat World album behind Futures.
It's my second too.
I love that one. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
I got to see them on that tour, and that really like changed it for me.
No, they're so good live. I've seen them like a half dozen times live. Yeah, being from Arizona, it's just like Jimmy World's playing.
Right. I saw them. It was them and Paramore right when Riot came out. So they were riding that Misery Business high, and it was really funny because it was like right when Paramore was like hitting that big mainstream. So all the people there to see Paramore were like 14 and like dressed like they go to Hot Topic, and then everyone there to see Jimmy Eat World just like looked like us now drinking beer, and we're like, and the two crowds did not like each other. And then all the little teens from Paramore kept trying to stage dive during Jimmy Eat World, and everyone was like, no, stop.
Like, we don't do that here.
Like just letting people
Wrong
drop.
vibe.
It's like, no,
Wrong vibe.
Hear You Me is on. Like, what are you doing? Like,
I just saw Jimmy Eat World open for Fall Out Boy, and that was kind of weird as well. Weird. I know they're kind of from the same scene, but two different crowds. I think.
See, I really loved Jimmy Eat World growing up, and I utterly hated Fall.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I hate Fall Out Boy. I hate Panic at the Disco. I don't care much for Fall Out Boy though.
I'm talking about like me 20 years ago, and much more opinionated, or 15 years ago, whatever this would be now. Like much more strongly.
You didn't even like old school Fall Out Boy. Like,
no, they were fine when they were
punk rock.
Like that was fine. And then the album, like I think like the last songs that I thought were at least tolerable was like the Dance and stuff like that. And then
From Under the Chorus,
really like they went off the deep end. But a lot of my friends liked them and Jimmy Eat World, and I was certainly like, nope, not a fan of the Fall Out Boy dudes. I'd be curious about what tracks you like, right? Like, always be Chase This Light, Firefight, and Dizzy. Are kind of the four I would identify, though I love the whole album.
But I'd be curious about the track list because I love them all.
Right, again, I try to limit to again 3 or 4 per album. But like I find no fault with any of the tracks. But those are the 4 that come to mind for me.
I'm gonna pull up my iTunes ratings of every track, and we'll see.
Do
you know this album very well, Kylan?
I do. Yeah, I think I'm trying to remember what song made my Jimmy Eat World Bop 10 that
I need to go look at
Josh and I
that because
did.
I've got one of those. Yeah, I've got a Spotify like top 10 Jimmy or top
Big
25 Jimmy
Casino
World.
is the
Okay, yeah,
one.
that's on. Yeah.
I know it's like the single, but it's so good.
Yeah, I've
The
got
acoustic guitar.
rated as 5-star songs. I've got Big Casino, Let It Happen, Carry You, and Dizzy.
Yeah. Big
Dizzy's
Casino and
so
Carry
good,
You,
too.
yeah, are fantastic tunes as
Yeah.
well. But like I find like no fault with this album at all. It kind of I think gets lost. A lot of Jimmy Eat World fans are like, yeah, Bleed American and Futures as well.
Yeah, I
which-
think it's seen as like past peak. Like I think people see like Clarity and Bleed American and Futures as the peak, and then like it starts going downhill there. But I'm with you. I think that's still
there's no
a peak
downhill Jimmy Eat
World
World
album.
after Bleed American.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah,
All
that's
right.
my number 5.
That's a good one.
My number 5 is one that Church Jam's now made me very sad about recently. It's Drawing Black
no.
Lines by Project 86.
Well, yeah. Yeah. We're not new metal boys. I'm sorry.
I got this one right as well. All right, I got 4 so far right.
I don't know what to say about it. There's nothing I can say that would convince Kylan otherwise.
No, well, here's the thing: is we opened that episode with a poll for everyone on which album we should cover, and it became very clear very early on that the people voting in the poll were just Project 86 fans and not fans of our show. Because if they were fans of our show and listened to our Pillar episode, they would know that we would not enjoy that album.
They are not similar to Pillar at all, though.
But it's the whole like new metal, like I can't do it, man. I can't do it. But here's the thing: I'm not super familiar with Project 86. Songs to Burn Your Bridges by, I feel like I would probably bop.
Songs to Burn Your Bridges by is my second favorite by them.
For different reasons, I frequently disagree with Church James now.
Oh yeah, I know.
Like when are those going to be up for sale?
I'm working on it. Merch store coming soon.
So this album came out in 2000. I got into POD in 99, and POD in their Southtown video had shirts on of all these bands they were representing. They had, one of them had a Project 86 shirt on, one of them had Zadeo, one of them had Chevelle. So I started listening to all the bands that I guess POD were associated with. One of the CD samplers that I got, it only had like 5 tracks on it, but it was POD, Project A6, Blindside, Stavesacre, and Hangnail. And I wore that sampler out until I finally got the albums by all of them. Over time, this has become my favorite of the bunch of those bands, although Stavesacre Speakeasy is really good too. But yeah, it's not butt rock, it's not Pillar.
Yeah, I know, but it's still just, yeah, I know. I'm just like, I'm a couple years younger, so I'm more of like a metalcore guy as opposed to like a new metal. So.
But do you know that they came from a hardcore band called Inner Means that was on Solid State and released a 7-inch single, I believe.
I probably like
EP.
that more.
So they came from the same kind of scene that was producing the metalcore bands you like. They had that edge, just with a little bit of new metal.
Yeah, you can keep trying. I'm not gonna like it, but I respect your pick.
All right, what do you got, Kylan?
Number 5.
Yep.
Where You Want to Be, Taking Back Sunday, 2004.
Wow. Okay.
Taking Back Sunday was a big band for me. Tell All Your Friends was the first non-Christian album I ever got. A friend of mine burned it for me, and it blew my mind. I also got it taken away from me because it has the line, "You could slit my throat." But Where You Want to Be, I think that's when they got Fred in the band. And Fred was always hands down the best musician in the band. And I think the back-to-back of Where You Want to Be to Louder Now was like so good. Louder Now was their major label debut, so it's like super polished. and Where You Want to Be was the perfect middle ground between Tell All Your Friends and Louder Now. I think they really perfected their sound. Have not sounded better since, in my opinion. So good emotional rock and roll music.
Have you
The
heard Fred's side pro
Oh
or
yeah, the Color
his
Fred.
no, Terrible Things?
Oh yes, 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 yes.
That album is so good.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just outside my top 100 of all time,
Yeah,
but like
it's
every
good.
song on it's a banger.
It's good.
I Would Slit Your Throat song. I forget what it's called. I'm not a
You're
huge
So
fan
Last
of
Summer.
them. There we go. Yes. I had a girl I was interested in driving from my hometown to Phoenix, which is like a 45-minute drive, and she kept listening to that on repeat because it was her favorite song by them and singing it. And by the end, I was no longer interested in her. I was like, yeah, after like the third go through on that, I was done.
You're out.
Yeah, I was done. It was
Yeah, they cut back on all the like that early emo stuff. I felt like they matured a lot lyrically. Some or one little fun fact: A Decade Under the Influence. No, not that one. This Photograph Is Proof. I know you know. That music video was directed by Tom DeLonge of Blink-182.
Oh, that's wild.
But
You were
yeah,
talking.
it's got my favorite Taking Back Sunday song of all time, number 5 with a bullet.
Mm-hmm.
And
You were talking about
then
how they hadn't sounded as good then. I actually like the Tidal Wave album.
I like
and
the Tidal Wave
It's like the
album.
only album that I actually like by them, which is very weird. Like all of my friends like the early first few albums, and I'm here
Right.
like going, I don't know, Tidal Wave kind of reminds me of like Guns N' Brixton by the Clash, which is
Yeah,
like a weird thing for me to say. Or like You Can't Look Back is another one that like I was like, why weren't they doing this
right.
10 years ago?
But that's the thing. Then they did that album, then they went right back to the kind of not
Mm-hmm.
great later stuff that they're doing.
Did they let the
So
good songwriter that was in Stray Light Run do things for a little bit, and then afterwards they were like, "Shut up! All right, shut up!
I
We let you have your
guess,
album."
yeah, I guess. So, all right, that's my number, what, 5?
5. Yep.
Okay. Actually, guys, I gotta go in a couple minutes.
Okay.
So let's do number 4, and then if you're cool with it, can I just do my top 3 really quick, and then I'll let
Yeah,
you guys
yeah.
keep going.
Yeah,
That's
go
fair.
ahead.
Eric, I'll make you the host. All right, cool.
Okay. Number 4 is 2004 Americano by Roger Klein and the Peacemakers. I've talked about my love for these Arizona Cowboys before. They cracked my top 10. They're along with other Arizona bands, I should say. Like several Arizona bands are in my top 10. It's filled with catchy rock and roll infused like cowboy tunes that capture kind of what Arizona feels to me. There's some sharp social commentary about Arizona, America and Mexico, some beautiful songs about love, some solid life advice, and some decent mentions of tequila.
Nice.
I would say like Your Name on a Grain of Rice, Switchblade, I Don't Need Another Thrill, and God Gave Me a Gun are ones I would suggest.
Sweet. Yeah, I have not heard of this at
Oh,
all.
I don't know that one.
Yeah, it's like all country, but very Southwest, like very red dirt
I can
country.
dig that. I love
Yeah.
that.
Added it to my playlist. So Kylan, do you want me to go ahead and do mine, or do
Yeah,
you
yeah,
want to go
yeah.
ahead and
Let's
do? Okay.
let's do number 4s, and then
All right. My number 4 is No Name Face by Lifehouse.
that was on Josh Balog's, right?
Yes, it is on Josh's. An album that
Goes
I
on my
think-
list of stuff I got right.
Good job. I feel like they get a bad rap because Jason Wade's voice is a little bit post grungy. Little close to being associated with Nickelback and things like that. But
Right.
he's a much better songwriter, and that album in particular, like it's very hard on sleeve, kind of like Dashboard Confessional was. But so like I see that kind of connection there that I guess a lot of people miss between kind of the stuff that I'm really into
Right.
and that. But I think it's just solid front to back, as all these albums here are.
It's a good album. I
Yeah.
haven't listened to it in a long time, but I remember liking it. I remember, yeah, kind of always writing Lifehouse off as that sort of, Nickelback sort of thing, and then slowly coming to realize that they were much more in line with like The Fray and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just a little earlier. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Kylan, what do you got
Sweet. My
for to?
number four. Uh, I'm so excited to talk about "Drunk Like Bible Times" by Deer and the Headlights. Have you guys heard of this band?
I have, yeah.
Heard of, yes, could tell you nothing about.
They only came out with 2 albums: "Small Steps, Heavy Hooves" in 2007, and then "Drunk Like Bible Times" in 2008. Uh, they were absolutely incredible. One of those bands though that kind of got screwed over by I think they were on Fueled by Ramen. No, Equal Vision. They were kind of part of that whole emo scene, but never really doing anything like any of those other bands. The dude the singer, I can't remember his name. His voice is just incredible. Like he's one of those guys. Like he sings almost the same way that like MF Doom or Aesop Rock or whatever raps, like just like kind of nonstop. But he's like singing it like his upper register and just like screaming, belting it out. Incredible lyrics, incredible music. It's real like acoustic, kind of like folky, like almost like a little bit like "It's All Crazy" by Me Without You. Um, but they're one of those bands that also were 1,000% better live than like it never fully translated to an album. And so I buried the lead a little bit earlier when we were talking about Jimmy Eat World. Deer in the Headlights opened that show with Paramore and Jimmy Eat World, and that was 90% of the reason I went to that show. They were so good. But what?
I was gonna say I feel like I saw them open for May.
Oh yeah, that'd be a good
I
show.
don't know if that sounds right or not. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
But yeah, they've got a couple good songs on there. Carl Solomon Blues, Saintly Rose, "Oh Oh," "Flowers from My Brain." I mean, it's all the whole album is just bangers back to back. And that's one, as opposed to like the Unicorns, I highly recommend everyone go listen to Deer in the Headlights. It's DEAR and the Headlights. One of the coolest things about them too that I love is they did those 2 albums and then released a statement saying that they were breaking up, not because of any drama, but they were like, we want to make music about real life, and we've been spending so much time just doing music. We haven't had the life experiences to make what we feel is interesting music. So they kind of hung it up on their own terms, which was pretty cool. 2 albums. It's almost criminal that we didn't get more from them, but so good. So good. Highly, highly, highly recommend them.
Awesome. Do you want to go ahead and do your top 3 since
you
got to run?
I'm so sorry I got to leave, so I'm just going to quickly blast off my 3, 2, 1. 2 of them have already been mentioned. My number 3 is "The Con" by Tegan and Sara. There's not much else to say about it. That album's incredible. I did have one little fun fact. Half of the bass on the record was played by Matt Sharp, the original bassist from Weezer, and the other half was played by Hunter Bergen, the bass player from AFI.
Yep. We played on Tegan's songs, and the other guy, Matt, played on Sarah's songs by Bray.
And Jason McGurr did all the drums from Death Cab, and he's the best drummer ever. My number 2 is "The Devil and God Are Raging Inside Me" by Brand New.
I wish we had time.
So we've tried multiple times to cover that show on Church Jams Now, because it's our show and we can decide whatever we want. It's a big album for me. Kind of blew my mind. Perfect sad boy record. We'll have to talk about it more, AJ. I'm very excited. And my number 1 is "Plans" by Death Cab for Cutie.
Woohoo!
That album, which is ironic because I actually have lyrics from Transatlanticism tattooed on my arm, but "Plans" is my favorite record. My first.
Well, you need a "Plans" tattoo then.
I know. I need more tattoos. Those are my top. I could talk about them for hours and hours and hours, but unfortunately I have to go. But thank you so much, Eric, for having me on. And I'm excited to hear y'all's top 3s whenever I edit this episode.
Thanks for coming on. Sorry we got a little long winded.
Oh no, dude, it's all good. I love it. Eric, I'm gonna make you the host
All
so
right.
that I can
Okay.
leave, and then
Okay.
y'all be good. It'll still all record locally to my computer, so
Okay.
it'll be good.
That'll work. Thank you.
Awesome.
All
Have a good night, man.
right, bye y'all.
All right. See ya.
A few moments later.
Give up by Postal Service. But yeah, District Slips on tonight, such great heights, brand new colony. And this place is a prison, may have been how teenage me felt about my hometown. But yeah, do you have thoughts on the Postal Service?
I like the Postal Service. I've listened to that album several times. It's good. I was late to it, so like it may have meant more to me had I been into it when it came out. But I mean, Such Great Heights is just such a great song.
I think I found the Postal Service before Death Cab for Cutie.
Oh,
I
okay.
think it was through the Postal Service that I found Death Cab for Cutie, which again kind of tracks.
Yeah, opposite for me.
But yeah, it's hilarious. I mean, you know how my love of like Joy Electric and stuff like that. How did I not know Joy Electric at that time, considering like where I was and my love of 1980s music and my love of Postal Service Give Up? You'd figure I'd be like, and electronic indie music. Let's search for more of this and find
Yeah.
Joy Electric. Especially because of again Tooth and Nail bands were
Yeah,
massively in my circulation. Yet somehow my brain was just, I think is the name. I think my brain was just like, we don't want to cover Joy stuff. Like, that brain, we're just gonna ignore that.
Right.
What was your number three?
My number 3 is The Moon Is Down by Further Seems Forever.
Oh,
Not
have that on my guest list for you.
It probably would have at least made my honorable mentions before we, started working on this list. But like the last couple months I've been listening to it more, and the production is so good on it. There's so much going on. If you listen, to whatever aspect you want in the song, you can pick it out and be interested in it. And there's just so much replayability, I think, with it. It just sounds good. The songs are great. The musicians are great. One of my favorite bands to see live is Further Seems Forever. And they just announced that they're playing the Furnace Fest pre-show the night before. So I bought my ticket to that. Going to make sure I get there the day before Furnace Fest so I can see them. So yeah.
Furnace Fest lineup this year does not appeal to me quite like last year's one did.
I would say that it's the weakest lineup of the 4 years since they started. Further Seems Forever might actually be my favorite band that's playing, and they're not actually part of the fest. But part of me likes it when there's not a ton of bands that I'm dying to see, because if there's overlap,
yeah, it gets tough.
It's not as bad. I kind of like to camp out at one stage for as long as possible rather than stage hopping. So, if there's a few bands I like pretty close to equally, I'll just go wherever it's most convenient. But anyways, not to derail that conversation.
We get derailed on this show.
What's your number 2?
So, my number 2 is the love child of Bruce Springsteen and The Clash, known as Gaslight Anthem, and their 2008 59 Sound album. So it's funny that like Kylan talked about like listening to Bruce Springsteen, and that's how he got into Gaslight Anthem. People, when this album dropped, were like, "You have to listen to this. We know you well. You're gonna love this.
Yeah.
It sounds like Bruce Springsteen." But again, when thinking about 2008, I was like, I'm not into Bruce Springsteen. That's old man music.
Yeah.
And now I'm an old man, and so of course I love Bruce Springsteen. So, but I think eventually, a couple of years later, I eventually gave in and listened to it, and I owed an apology to the multiple people that told me to listen to this album because I would like it, because they were absolutely correct. It is aggressive and high energy. It is thoughtful and full of depth and emotion. It is like the audio form of the like classic muscle cars that frontman Brian Fallon sings about and loves so dearly. Like, it's powerful yet incredibly beautiful. I'm going to particularly highlight the 59 soundtrack, as it holds a ton of emotional significance for me. Up until a few years ago, it made me think of my grandpa Les, which is my mom's dad. Brian Fallon kind of reminds me if my grandpa came along a couple decades later, probably be a lot like Brian Fallon. Or Brian Fallon was born a couple decades late, might be another way to put it. But the song used to make me think about like when my grandpa died. And then about 2 years ago, it got expanded to my grandma. My grandma passed away. She'd been sick for a long time. I was heading out to Arizona a couple days later to see her one last time, and she unfortunately passed before I could make it. And I got a call from my mom telling me that. And in my grief, I turned to music and just hit like shuffle or random or whatever the word is on my phone. And this was the first song that came on. Like talk about kind of considering it already had made me think of my grandpa.
Yeah.
Kind of convenient happenstance there. And it hit hard because of that. When Gaslight Anthem reunited, my wife and I drove 4 hours to go see them play on
Oh,
that
wow.
tour, and I broke down absolutely crying when
Oh.
59 Sound started playing because of just like I think built up emotion of her passing and like just a whole bunch of things. Even when I saw them last fall play, I still got a little teary-eyed when they played this. I'm going through a series of tattoos for my kids right now. I've got one more to do, but once I get through that one, I'm going to be getting a guitar and a lyric from 59 Sound kind of wrapped around it for my
Nice.
grandparents.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, this packs a heck of an emotional punch for me. And besides 59 Sound packing that huge punch, like Great Expectations, High Lonesome, and The Backseat, I think are probably other tracks I would suggest to folks. Are you familiar with this? Do you have thoughts on this album?
Yeah, I know the album. I think I did have the CD before I gutted my collection. I think I've reacquired it, but I'm not 100% sure. But always loved the title track. I believe I had that single for several years before I actually got the album. So like I'd worn out the single already, which always kind of makes for an unbalanced listen to the album for the first time. And still, that song is just so great that I almost feel like it overshadowed a lot of the album for me, and maybe just because I was so familiar with it. But definitely a great album. Yeah, great band.
Heck yeah. What's your number
Also,
two? Oh, go ahead.
well, before we get there, I noticed you mentioned Plans was probably in your top 20. That means it was in the top 20 for all three of us, which was pretty
Yes.
cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be curious to know Kylan's like 11 through 20, but we don't need to have a 2 hour conversation about all of that.
Yeah.
Because I think that there's another album that is going to drop soon on your end that would likely fall in that my top 20 for me too.
Okay. Well, my number two, I'm guessing this is probably not one that would fall in your top 20, is Shimmer by Luna Halo.
No, but I got that on my list for you.
Good
My bingo
job.
card.
Nice. You know, I actually toyed with what it would look like if I had Shimmer of the Moon is Down at number one. I'm sure you know what my number one will
Oh
be,
yeah,
but
I know. That was the first one. I didn't even need to look at
yeah.
your list.
I I wanted to give everything else a shot, and this album, this was my this was my OK Computer. I missed OK Computer when it came out, very much in the Christian culture bubble.
You didn't miss it. You didn't get
Yeah,
to experience it.
right. So this was very influenced by OK Computer. Lots of weird guitar stuff, some cool atmospherics, kind of creepy, sad time sounding vocals, and very much OK Computer influence. But I do think,
Now you got to shape it because I don't think I listened to this when I went through your list. Now I'm gonna go in and be like, oh god, he compared it to Radiohead.
no, I'm not saying that people who experienced OK Computer first will feel the same about this, but they did borrow a lot of the tricks from OK Computer. But I think the songs are good enough that it stands on its own, and it does have some CCM tendencies where there's some lyrics that were very much intended for the Christian audience. The lead single very much feels like a single that was going to be pushed to Christian teenagers, called Superman. And then Delirious wrote one of the songs on here.
Oh.
And uh, from what I recall, there's a little bit of tension caused over that because Delirious, I guess, wrote the song "Hang On to You" for Luna Halo, with the expectation that it was not going to be a song that Delirious was going to use, and then Delirious changed their mind after Luna Halo put it out and put it on their album that came out the same year. So that song was released on 2 different albums the same year. I don't think Luna Halo too much appreciated that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's my number 2.
Okay, I have to check it out. Like so that's one I didn't get to.
Yeah.
Cool.
What's your number 1?
At number 1 is Futures by Jimmy Eat World. So it's dark, it's moody, it's hopeful, it's positive. It feels like what they were going for on Clarity, which I actually don't like a huge ton. I like Lucky Denver Mint on there, which I think again explains and why I like this. But they ran it through like kind of the Clarity vibe through the pop oriented filter that they started kind of adopting, with Bleed American. It sort of answers the question of like, what if Husker Du, which is the second time I've mentioned them tonight, got together with like U2 to make a record. Taking the very best of those 2 bands together. The songs are big and they're catchy and they're full of depth and a fair amount of like spiky guitars and distortion. So yeah, I love this album a ton. I'm not the only one in my family. My sister is a huge Jimmy Eat World fan and has the Love Goes Anywhere line from Polaris tattooed on her. And I'm likely to at least have some reference to this album tattooed on me eventually as well. I gotta work through the list of tattoos. But favorites on here include Work, Kill, Pain, Night Drive, Polaris. You mentioned it. Like, what are some thoughts maybe you didn't get to drop in earlier about it?
Polaris and 23 are both in my top 100 songs of all time list.
23 is also good, yeah.
Yeah. I went to the anniversary tour, 10-year anniversary tour for this album, which was now 10 years ago. It's just
Yeah,
crazy.
because this is 2004. This is when
Yeah.
I graduated high school, which is wild.
Yeah, great show. Probably the last show that my wife actually went to with me, so that was pretty well, not the last like non-arena show, I guess, that she
There
went
you
to
go.
with me. But man, it's so good. I was not I was not a Jimmy Eat World fan until this came out, and then
Okay.
after I got into this one, I went back and enjoyed Bleed American and Clarity, and I was all caught up when, as we mentioned, Chase This Light came out.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's the one that made me a fan. It's one of those that I imagine I'll be listening to for the rest of my life.
Yeah, a solid album.
I love that your and Kylan's number 1s were in my top 20. Like, this makes me happy.
Yeah, it's fun to see like the where we overlap and where we don't, and then like there's a lot of stuff that I think that you like that I like as well, but I like different levels.
Yeah.
And same with Kylan, where I'm like, yeah, that was fine. It was a bit further out for me, but I knew it.
Yeah.
If somebody had it on, I wouldn't hate it.
Right.
So it is fun to see like where we overlap, and then like I think some of it's like the strength of overlap for like you or I. It might be like, oh, this is a 4.5 for me, not a 5, or a 4, not a 4.5 or whatever. Where it's like, yeah, we
Right.
still dig it
Yeah.
if you know it.
Yeah.
But I also think there's gonna be stuff that like we don't know and we go back and listen to and we're like, yeah, all right, just didn't find this. I like it.
Right. Yeah.
Just didn't know it.
For sure.
So I do find that to be fun. But yeah, let's get to your number 1.
No surprise to anybody who knows me. The Everglow by May.
So good.
It's where my Twitter handle comes from, in Everglow. Like I'm in this, all this. I'm in there.
This,
That's
yes.
that's where that came from. It's an emo pop masterpiece. It's a concept album. It's an adventure. It's just got some really good songs. Cool production by Ken Andrews from Failure. Um, I'm glad that the typical tooth and nail producers and mixers, or at least the producers, I don't know. Yeah, produced and mixed by Ken Andrews. So the normal guys who did Tooth and Nail records, for some reason, were not involved in this. And I love what they do, but I think them not being involved with this gave it a distinct sound that ages differently from the Tooth and Nail catalog, which is not better or worse, but it's different.
This stands out. This album does stand. This came in at number 14,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
but this does stand out in its production.
Yeah. Yeah, it's mine and my wife's album. You know, we had some of the songs played at our wedding, and you know, lyrics from back in the MySpace days, you know, written on each other's comment walls and things like that. And
Like early on in dating, where you caught suspension? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, definitely.
Like when you were traveling, were you so close but yet so far away?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Um, so yeah, that's my number one.
I mean, obviously, I guessed that one
Yeah.
right.
What else did you have?
In your top 10?
Yeah.
So I got, Everglow, I got Shimmer, the No Name Face, Drawing Black Lines, Holiday Holiday, the North album, and The Artist. So I got 6 of your 10.
Okay, that's good.
What was missing was, I think, Dead Poetics dropped out,
Yeah.
Blindside dropped out,
Yeah.
and Berlin Cities dropped out.
Cities. That one's fallen so far for me.
Oh wait, I got 7 of your 10.
Okay.
There you
That's
go.
really good. That's really good.
That's not bad at all, considering I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, here's his list. I think it's tweaked a bit from conversations with him. But yeah, so not bad. But of
Awesome.
course, again, it's kind of cheating. You already have like your opinion a year ago, but this highlights something that we've talked about separately, which is like any of these lists, including Apple's best album, whatever, pull the same people every 3 months.
Yeah.
That's going to look different. It is, right? I mean, there's going to be some consistency and some variation. I easily think some of the top 20 albums that I had could have slotted in the 7 through 10 range for me on this, depending on the day, week, month, whatever. And so like this is terribly subjective, and not only like I don't mean that in a negative, but just it is.
Yeah.
And it's dependent on kind of where we are, you know, and what's going on in life and what's hitting at that time. And so like these lists might look different. And I think these lists would have looked different in 2010. In 2010, if you had asked me to make my 2000 to 2009 list, I think that there are some things on here that would not be, and there's other things that would have been really high. I mean, I think in particular, Copeland would have jumped a ton probably for me at that time. Ryan Adams would have jumped a ton. I think Brand New would have been on my list before things. I have same reason Ryan Adams dropped off my list too is like he dropped further down because his stuff was not as bad as Brand New's. But like that stuff is impacted it, right? Like any of that, like my opinion towards some a band may shape how I interact with that. We've talked, I think, a bit about that stuff before. And so it would be amazing if I could jump in some time machine to be like, yo, right now, 2010, like it's 2010. What's your 2000 through 2009 list? Because I think it would have looked very different.
I'm sure I had one, and I need to look and find it. I had lists of my favorite songs when I was in like 6th grade. So in old notebooks and things. I believe it was like "Kissed from a Rose" by Seal at the time, maybe.
Ah, that's off the Batman soundtrack. That was pretty good.
Yeah.
But like at 2000, 2010, I probably would have had Angels and Airways really high too. I was working on music under a title of Rogue Agent Rebellion with a roommate of mine, and the overlap was like largely Jimmy Eat World and Angels and Airwaves, if you have a sense of like what that music would have
Yeah.
sounded like. Um, that's what we're at least aiming for. But yeah, like I don't know, this is a fun thing to revisit. I joked, that I feel like I needed to go back and like read Blue Like Jazz now, and put on like a Love Drug album, because I feel, mentally thrown back to
Right.
that when that would have been like a normal activity for me.
I've been binge watching ER to help get
There
me
you
in
go. Yeah, your time
that.
machine's working too, man.
Yeah.
But no, this is super fun. That May album is incredible. It, it was a heavy rotation of mine. I think part of why it landed on 14 is like, we're gonna talk about this. I don't need to put it in my top 10.
Interesting. I wonder where it would have landed had I not been involved.
Yeah, I do wonder. I think it would have been probably closer to around
Okay.
10-ish, maybe. But I do wonder. I'm not saying that was definitely, but that thought came to
Right.
mind of like, well, we can talk about this either
Yeah.
way. It doesn't need to be there. Um, because it is so good. Suspension in particular, I think I vacillate between Suspension and Ember and Envelopes being my favorite two May songs.
Mm, two big ones.
But again, that's a Fuse album. Like I remember May's Suspension video. They're like in a field, if I'm remembering correctly,
Yeah.
like running
Yeah.
through a field. I remember that being on the Fuse station. Like, Fuse had such good
Gosh, I
music
loved.
on
Yes.
in like that mid 2000s range. Like
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to that station, but my God, for like 2005 to like 2010 maybe, that's where I discovered so much cool music.
Oh yeah. Same.
They blew MTV out of the water
Yeah.
when it came to like alternative and stuff like that. So,
Definitely.
but yeah,
I did want to mention, so cities, had we made this list in 2010, would have been my number two or three. It's
it's fallen
still
that much.
it's
Why?
still
Can I ask?
like it's still like number 50, I think, all time for me. So just
But it's fallen that much just in the past year, then, according to your own list about a year and a half ago.
oh. Did you look at the one on my site? Is that where it was? Yeah. Um it just I
How
wonder if
would
I've
you?
played it too much. I don't know if I played it too much, or I think Anberlin in general is just not aging as well for me. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's just not aging as well as a lot of others. I still think it's a great album, obviously, and anything in my top 250 albums of all time, I think is great. And like what you were saying about list changes so much, I keep a list that I can edit anytime on my Rate Your Music page, and I swear I go on there multiple times per week and rearrange albums based on how I'm feeling that day.
I was rearranging my list at my daughter's softball game tonight. So
That's awesome.
there's that.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I think the 2010 to 2019 list is going to be probably the most difficult one yet.
So I did make a 2010s list at the end of the decade. So I'll have to take a look at that when we make our new list and record it and see how different my list is now from then.
You should actually not look at it. Make the new list.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, I
Yeah,
would I would look at it like on the show or something
yeah, exactly.
when we
Live,
record.
bring it up.
Yeah.
Without looking at it. Yeah, I started doing this sort of thing probably 5 years ago, but I was actually like at the end of every year because, and a lot of it too would just be like you would see those lists that are out
Yeah.
there, and
Yeah.
then I'd be like, well, that's a terrible list. They're clearly what? And so then I would write my own for those years. So I actually have like I think eventually maybe we do the like 2020 through 2024 5 year mid. That one is going to be way easier to put together, I think, because I have
Yeah.
more notes on that, for lack of a better word.
Right.
Thanks pandemic, I think, on that out of sheer boredom.
Yeah.
Is when I started doing that. But yeah, no, this is super fun. I love the overlap. I love the difference, and I love that like on the outside, it's like, yeah, they all like alternative music. We're like, yeah, crack that open a little bit.
Yeah.
because it
Thank,
gets real different.
thanks for being patient with me to get before I got back in the mindset of doing this.
I wish I had taken the version that I did like months ago on this and not looked at. I was editing live in the same document on my phone. And so I do, because I think that there would be about half as many tracks different in my top 10.
Interesting.
If I'm being honest, that was like 6 months ago, right? Like I forget. I'm not like that's not like trying to be passive aggressive. I'm trying to genuinely
No, I
remember
know.
when I started working on this
Right.
list. Um, and so yeah, I think that they're probably half the list changed from
Yeah,
6 months ago.
probably so.
So
Sorry about that.
no, don't apologize. It gives me more time to like ruminate on it.
I feel motivated to get going for the 2010s.
There you
So
go.
if you're feeling it, we'll
I'm up for
start
it. We
working
may
on
need to let
that.
Kylan like mentally recover because I think we might have broke him.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
I think we did break him. He- yeah, I'm glad he was on though. That's
Absolutely,
fun.
yes. I like new perspectives on this
Yeah,
stuff.
for sure.
So
Shout out to Kylan for always making the show look and sound good and even be willing to come on here and uh talk about whatever nonsense
they put up
that
with
I
our
want to
rambling.
talk about. Yep.
Well,
All
it was
right.
late for you, man. So
It's late,
have a good.
but on Friday nights, I'm good with it
I'm
because I
cutting
don't have to
into your
work.
ER time now.
It's
Like
true.
that's
I will be going and watching some more ER after this. But this was fun. I've been looking so forward to this.
same here.
So yeah, excited to go with the 2010s.
Same here, man.
AJ, you want to tell people where they can find you online?
What's the new account? AJS
Uh,
is writing.
yeah.
There you go. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram, and Eric will very kindly tag me in that. And as soon
Yep.
as Kylan can stop making lists and finish what he's doing, I'll maybe have something cool to share there.
Cool. And find Kylan, follow Church Jams now. You can
I
follow
disagree with them
me.
frequently.
Yeah, it makes it fun. You can follow me at an Everglow on Twitter, and if you enjoy what we've been doing on here, please subscribe.
And tell us
And
why we're wrong.
yeah, I love to hear your list. Leave your top 10 in the comments. We'll see y'all next time.
Yep.
Bye. See if I can figure out how to stop recording. Oh, there it is.